Peter, would you mind just doing a little introduction of yourself and your history?
Okay, great. Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Peter Kahn. I'm a board certified chiropractic neurologist, board certified in integrative medicine, board certified in functional medicine, as well as a certified gluten practitioner. A lot of, letters, but all that is to say is that I spend a lot of time, invested probably over 6 figures in my education. And a lot of this has to do with my own family's health problems. It started with my father having liver cancer. This is many years ago when I was still in chiropractic college. And, my brother and I, we try to help him and figure stuff out. And just with a little bit of the stuff that we did, my father was able to live 5 years symptom-free. And this is when he was age 75, diagnosed with stage 4 liver cancer, told he had 6 months to live, and he lived 5 years instead. High quality of life, by the way. So that taught me a lot. And then I have my kids. My son had a severe scalding injury where hot water spilled down the side of his body. He had, 30-degree burn over 15% of his body. And so, and ever since that, he developed multiple food sensitivities and allergies and mood issues. We thought he was going to have autism. So that led me down the road of functional neurology to learn about the brain and how to, do things that are natural to help the brain to recover. And then my daughter had developed severe food sensitivity as an infant to dairy, anaphylactic shock, by the way, had to go to the hospital. And so that led me down the road of functional medicine, trying to learn about food sensitivity reactions, immunology. And eventually I was able to connect all the dots and figured out that there's a brain, gut, and immune connection. And this is basically what I've been doing, kind of field testing it in my practice, in my online virtual functional medicine practice to try to help people with chronic conditions. So that's where we're at.
Awesome. Yeah, we're going to talk about your event in a minute, but I wonder if you could share who's a typical client of yours? Like if you could give kind of a profile of who's coming to you, what are they showing up with?
Yeah, I would say, interestingly, mostly female, although we do get a lot of guy clients. The reason it's female because most females struggle with these chronic conditions like Hashimoto's and thyroid. In fact, my practice when I first started was mostly Hashimoto cases. I did that probably exclusively for about 4 to 5 years. And obviously in that path, many females have thyroid and Hashimoto issues. So we attract a lot of female clients, and female tend to be more in tune with their symptom and want to seek help. So, typically middle-aged female between 35 to 45. Typically, these are people who have chronic symptoms, like they have, symptoms that they can't connect the dot, right? You go to multiple doctors and multiple specialists. Everybody say that you're fine or you're crazy. And you get, stereotyped a little bit, like, oh, yeah, you're just one of those,
difficult
hypochondriac, here's Prozac, and so these people then, because they get frustrated with the Western medicine, then start to go to natural alternative medicine. And many times they kind of didn't get a satisfactory answer either because of the very things I'm going to talk about today, in that a lot of times it's kind of like a supplement for every symptom that you have, right? What's the remedy for this? What's the remedy for that symptom? Instead of looking at the underlying root cause. So then they don't get resolved from seeing a natural alternative practitioner. And then they start to swing all the way to the other side, Dr. Google, start to find answer online. And that's how they usually find people like you and I, through summits or interview, or I have a big Facebook, presence, or not Facebook, I'm sorry, YouTube presence. I put a lot of educational videos, and that's how they eventually, find a message that resonates with them. And it's not just a message, it's not just about your symptoms. It's about how do you go about understanding your symptoms, and how do you decode that and unlock it?
Yeah, you talked about how they're sort of disregarded, these clients. And to me, the understanding is really important because it validates you for yourself. And I've been through some of that same stuff with mold. And when I understand, I don't know if I shared last time we were interviewed, like mold will create this inflammation in the brain and you don't manufacture hormones. And when I learned that, I was like, oh, that's why I had all those period problems all those years. And like, it wasn't what everybody told me it was, which is just like, oh, you're too stressed out. It was like I had mold in my brain. And yeah, I really like that. I think people really enjoy your level of education. We're going to talk about the brain immune gut connection. The part that I'm getting the most jazzed about is the brain. You've been studying with some mentors much longer than me, but when I started to study the brain, I was like, wow, like there's so many missing pieces here now that I understand the brain. And I think people know, like, in a broad sense, like the brain controls the body, or the brain's important, but I don't think they really have a sense. I think we still in our culture think the brain is like our thoughts, and we don't really realize the brain is controlling our body systems. So I wonder if you could just give a little primer on that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, basically, you live your life through your brain. Your experience and what your reality is, and your emotion and your perception, it's all based on brain function. So that's just how important it is. It forms a fabric of your life and your quality of life. So when your brain function goes down, literally your quality of life goes down, your productivity goes down, your emotionality and your ability to enjoy, all the life that has offered to you decreases. That's just how important the brain is. Now, know that the brain is basically a huge antenna. If you think about a brain as being an antenna that pick up signal from the five senses, right? You have your sights, your smell, your taste, your hearing, and your touch. And these are obviously the five senses that, for us to perceive the world. But we also have interoception, which is the senses coming from within the body, like from your gut, and these sensations in the body goes to your brain as well. So from the five senses and the interoception, that forms your reality. And so the brain is really a big antenna. And then from that perception, then it sends out an output, right? Because we're a stimulus response type of organism, right? Just like an amoeba, if you like poke at it or shine a heat on it, then the amoeba will like scooch away from the heat, right? It goes toward the food. It knows how I did that, away from
I really like that touch. That's great.
We are the same way, right? We tend to go toward pleasure, right? We go away from pain.
Yeah.
And so this perception and this response is how we survive in our environment, right? If the temperature is too cold, we shiver and we turn the air conditioning down. So the fact that we go move our finger to go turn the air conditioning up or down is a motoric response in response to something in our environment, which is we're being too cold. So what it comes down to, that's really what the brain does. But it goes much deeper than that, than just a motor response, because it controls many things that's at a subconscious level that we're not aware of. But even the subconscious stuff is motoric or motor in nature. For example, gastric motility, for your brain to innervate the gut through the vagus nerve so that you can move food along the pipe, your intestine, that's a smooth muscle motor response, right? So a lot of it, how we control our valves and our enzyme release and all the stuff, a lot of it is through, contractions and motor function. So it's all brain. Now, I think the biggest part that people have misunderstanding about, and many doctors kind of forget or don't focus on it, is the fact that our brain controls, a big part of our brain is controlling the autonomic nervous system. So, I don't know if you ever heard of people say, oh, we're only using 10% of our brain.
Yeah. Is that true?
Yeah. It's actually not true.
Okay.
We use 100% of our brain all the time. What they mean by using only 10% is that 90% of what your brain controls are stuff that are not conscious to you.
Oh, okay.
So
just heart rate and stuff like that.
Yeah, the 10% is just the stuff that you're aware of. The other 90% is stuff like autonomic function, vagus nerve, peptides, how it's controlling the pituitary to release hormone, all that stuff on autopilot that's life sustaining.
Wow.
That's what the brain does.
What another goofy like misconception to say we only use 10%. That's really funny that we all think that. We've all heard that.
I think that's, the 10% is probably referring to our potential, right? I mean, our brains, it's not like it's always working, right? To make it function. But I think, potential is that, we could probably learn a lot more. We can use our body a lot more. We can, do things that we don't think we're capable of. We just push ourselves. So it's true. We probably have a lot of untapped potential. But as far as neurological function, no, there's not like 90% just sitting idle. It's working all the time. Okay. So what I'm saying is that 90% is controlling a lot of these autonomic function. And so you have to understand that autonomic function drives all the digestion and all this internal organ function. But that autonomic function comes from the brain. And it's essentially the brain is organized hierarchically. Is that how you say it?
That's a long word, yeah.
It's a hierarchy.
Hierarchically? Whatever. Just trust us with your health. We're not that good with words.
With it. So there's a hierarchy to how the brain is organized.
Okay.
So the lowest part of the brain, or the most primitive part of the brain.
Right. We hear about that.
Yeah. Lizard brain, right? And then the next level of the brain is your movement brain. So like the lowest level is a lizard. The next level will be like cat. So that's why, cat is more graceful and more better balanced than the alligator is, because they have more fine-tuned muscular
motor skills.
Motor skills. That's a higher animal with motor skill, right? Because your lizard and alligator just move like this, where do all kinds of amazing stuff.
True.
And then, but then there's another level above that. So there's 3 levels of the brain. There's a primitive brain, there's a motor brain, and then there's the human brain, the cortical brain, the neocortex, so that's why humans were able to think about the future, project, understand the abstract, do our tax returns, or, your dog, they can fetch you slippers, but they can't do your tax return for you. So that's what makes the human brain so special, is that we have this higher level of organization called the neocortex that can do what no other animal on planet Earth can do. So what happens is the higher level brain essentially kind of sends output and also at the same time suppress the lower level brain. So what that means is the lizard brain is constantly have to be suppressed, because if it wasn't, you get all limbic response, which means you get really emotional, you get aggressive, you snap at the drop of a hat. That's like the lizard brain, like the anger, that's what stops you from like going down the street and just like see an attractive person and just like go up and kiss them. And, like that we don't do that because we can suppress those impulses. If your higher level brain is working good, it suppresses those lower level.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Turns out that the lizard brain, by default, our default for the nervous system is sympathetic drive. By default, we're fight or flight.
Really?
That's why when you see monkey, if you see a monkey at the zoo, they're always like, always like this, and always like, fighting for territory. There's a food, and like lizard, like sex, anger, and attack, and predatory behavior. So by default, that's how we are, right? But our human brain, if it's working really good, it'll be able to suppress that lower limbic system so we don't get all crazy. So sometimes when you see people acting out and all the stuff and doing things that's socially inappropriate, it's because they lack the ability for the cortical function to suppress that lower part of the brain. That's why kids, right? When they're little kids, the temper tantrum, the terrible 2s and 3s, why? Because they don't have a developed brain just yet. So they want something, they just like, I want it. Instead of like thinking about long-term, right? They just want short-term gratification. They don't understand long-term, where you got to work for it. You got to save up for it. They just like, I just want it now. That's that example of lack of cortex kind of controlling that lower impulses. Now, it doesn't just suppress those lower impulses. It also stimulates those lower impulses on the other side. So at the same time, it suppresses
when it's appropriate to suppress.
It suppresses the sympathetic function.
Okay.
Fight or flight response. At the same time, it stimulates the parasympathetic function. So healthy brain activity in the cortical level suppresses fight or flight while stimulating parasympathetic function, which is your rest and digestion system.
But I imagine sometimes it's going to activate sympathetic. because it's like you're in danger.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Like when there's remember stimulus response. So if you see a tiger lurking around the corner, that's not behind a cage in the zoo, you'll be like, that tiger is not behind the cage. I'm about to get eaten. Yeah, that stimulus, right, from your vision system and then activating the memory system, like what you learned in the books about tiger eating a prey, makes you like fight or flight. So then you go, right? So, but that fight or flight, remember, is supposed to be short term, right? We're not supposed to fight or fly all the time.
We're not supposed to be a monkey.
We're not supposed to be on all the time. We're supposed to be just like, okay, stress, and then that's it. And you calm down and you relax for a while, and then the next stress comes. But modern day living is stress all the time. And that's not just like from relationship stress, money stress, COVID stress. That's also stress from internal inflammatory
Definitely.
issues.
Yeah, we'll talk about that more in a minute.
Yeah.
So in that case, if there's like a chronic stress or an internal stress, would you say what's the effect it's having on the brain? Let me ask you that, on the higher brain.
Right. So short term, the effect on the higher brain is that it can make you more driven. It can make you have like increased energy so you can get stuff done, right? So that's what short-term stress is for. But long-term effects of stress is that in your brain, and especially in the hippocampal region of the temporal lobe, that's where long-term memory, short-term memory, circadian rhythm is all controlled. That area is loaded with the receptors for cortisol. So the effect of long-term stress is that you get this high cortisol output all the time.
Oh gosh.
And when you have high cortisol all the time, those receptors in the brain gets constantly bombarded with cortisol and constantly stimulated and activated. Eventually you lead to hippocampus degeneration. So you start to lose brain cells in that area, and that's what's the precursor to Alzheimer's dementia. And obviously stress has other effects on the heart, absolutely causes inflammatory issues, can cause heart disease, cause insulin resistance, so you get diabetes, blood pressure from constantly building plasticity in the sympathetic, nervous system, so you get this blood pressure issue. So yeah, chronic stress is a major killer in the Western society. As much we talk about nutrition and sugar and gluten, even like stress probably kills more people than even those things, I think. It just kills you over 40 years,
Yeah.
And it's hard to measure that, right? So what happens when you're chronically stressed, what ends up happening is you get heart disease, you might get autoimmune disease, you get inflamed. So then you go to the doctor, they say, oh, you have inflammation, you have arthritis, you have autoimmune disease. They never say like it's your stress, because most Western medical doctors don't even ask about stress. That's not in their job description to ask you about stress. They'll
tell you must be stressed like me, but then they don't like look any further.
They say it's normal, right?
Yeah, like, they don't tell you what to do about it.
Everybody has Alzheimer's. It's an epidemic, but it's normal because everybody has it.
Right,
so
right.
Stop thinking about what's normal, because like who the heck
common? Yeah.
You want to be healthy and optimal, not normal.
Yeah. So let's take this great question from Jen before we talk about your event. She was asking about kids. So she wondered how you treated your own kids. Are they recovered? Then she said, how does trauma play into brain issues? Do you believe if a kid has ADHD and trauma, that neurofeedback is one of the best treatments because they're averse to healthy foods and supplements? So I know that's a lot of questions if you need me to read that.
So my kids are doing much better. So like, for example, Brooke, my number 3, she had a anaphylactic shock to dairy, as an infant, had to rush to the hospital. And so for basically since then, for like 4 or 5 years after that, we basically went gluten, and we tested them too, to see, okay, what other allergies and sensitivity do we all have? It turns out we have a whole bunch. So we end up having to, with our kids and everybody, family of 4 kids, adopt a very restricted elimination diet, eliminating all the food that they couldn't eat, like, grains and, gluten and dairy and soy. So it was really difficult for a few years, but, we got good at it, right? And then we got accustomed to it and it became our lifestyle. So it wasn't a big deal. It just depends. I mean, I wasn't about to, make my kids suffer and let them have problem if we knew there was some kind of solution. So prior to that, I didn't know there was, I can eliminate food, I can heal leaky gut. I didn't know that. I had to learn, right? And by doing that, they got better. So my thing with, audience is that, hey, you can do it too. So they're better in the sense that like Brooke, who used to have anaphylactic reaction to dairy, no longer has anaphylactic reaction to dairy. Like she can actually eat cheese once in a great while and not actually have any reaction. So that means that she has healed that, right? She still has anaphylactic reaction to egg, not anaphylactic.
Wow.
Has allergy reaction to egg, not anaphylactic, but she is anaphylactic to peanuts. So no peanut-free zone, and so to speak, right? Maddox, he was having severe temper tantrums and upper respiratory issues, all due to leaky gut from the burn injury he had. So, we have to, cut out the foods. We have to really watch the diet, right? Not giving him things with, process and color and too much sugar. So for many years, we were really strict. I mean, I was one of those parents where, we go have Halloween trick or treat, and we get back, you get 3 candy, I'm throwing the rest in the trash. And they all like, what? That's inhumane. But that's
Inhumane.
So, and then of course they took supplements, to heal the gut, vitamin D, various different things that we did. Everybody's different. So I don't want to say, oh, what I did with my kids is what you should do with your kids. As far as neurofeedback, that can be very helpful. We have that. I done that in my physical practice. When we had a physical practice, I'm completely virtual now. But we did neurofeedback for a good several years in my practice and with our kids. And, I'm not sure if that's the thing that helped them the most. I think it was more of, lifestyle that helped my kids the most. Doesn't mean neurofeedback is not helpful in certain situations, but certainly for us, it's with the lifestyle change.
Yeah, and Jen, also, if kids are not sensitive to different foods and supplements, I'm really a big fan of, other home treatments that you can do, like sauna and red light therapy. And I just bought, I didn't even tell you yet, Peter, I just bought a hyperbaric oxygen chamber yesterday, and kids apparently love it. They, like, autistic kids and stuff will ask to go in. So yeah, that was one thing. And then I'll take one more part of that question and then we'll move on. She asked about trauma, and, you mentioned your son was scalded and then all these things happened afterwards. So I see that too with, the trauma, so to speak, the internal trauma of mold toxicity. And then it becomes like a whole lifestyle trauma too. But when the body's in any kind of shock, whether it's like internal trauma or external, it's going to start miscommunicating in all sorts of ways, can lead to all sorts of conditions like you demonstrated.
Trauma, two different types, right? There's physical trauma and there's emotional trauma. Certainly there's no shortage of people out there, that has emotional trauma. And just so you know, emotional trauma doesn't have to be like you're abused or molested or anything like that. I mean, for a kid, they can be traumatized just because they got bullied in school or somebody mentioned something about their lunch bag. I mean, they can be traumatized from that, right? Not in a being abused way, but still that can have an impression. And sometimes that's enough for them to start to have to compensate for that and being self-conscious. So there's some, theory on those areas. And in my Brain Immune Gut Masterclass, I've interviewed other experts who, several of them talk about the same thing, so it's definitely a thing. But certainly, physical trauma and injuries and things like that can definitely start this inflammatory cycle that can be, that can have lasting effects. Like, for example, for my son, you create a major inflammatory response for him by having a burn injury that led to leaky gut and leaky lung and leaky brain, I believe. So therefore, he had a respiratory issue, he had a neurological issue, he developed food sensitivity he never had. That was the case for him. So, as far as, for kids, besides nutrition and lifestyle, obviously if there's specific problem like, Asperger's or ADHD or OCD and these type of things, we have to look at hemispheric balance between the left and the right brain. So that's where a lot of my training was in, is learning how to, do specific brain-based therapy to balance the different hemisphere, or even front to back, depends on what part of the brain that we're talking about. So it gets really, really detailed, but that's like the therapy side of things. But, it's always like you work together, right? Like the therapy doesn't work if your nutrition sucks, and your nutrition can be really good, but if it brings out of balance, it doesn't matter what the nutrition does. Meaning, let's just say like my right bicep is a lot smaller than the left because I'm a left-handed tennis player. So my right bicep is underdeveloped and I want to make that more developed. how many grams of protein and vegetable and probiotic do I take to make that right bicep bigger? Like no amount.
Right. It doesn't work.
It's a
Yeah.
matter of stimulation of that right bicep to get it to grow. So that has to do with activation, and nutrition can help, give fuel, but the nutrition is not going to go just to the right bicep. So if you have a right brain that's not working so great, that's causing ADHD. I mean, nutrition is only going to take you so far, but if you still have that imbalance, that's still got to be addressed. So
yeah, that's a great example. Sometimes we get a little too hung up on food, and I talk about that in the detox world too. So this is your opt-in page here for your events starting very soon. Let's see. So right away, you got some things here, a bunch of stuff, a bunch of smoothie recipes, gut repair guide. That's awesome. What's this one? It didn't load. The roadmap. So this whole event is called, it's a really cute name, the big idea, right? Brain, immune, gut. And one thing I like about it is the amount of information isn't overwhelming, right? Less speakers, and then you're having these specific, like, I don't know if you want to call them, what did you call them?
master sessions.
Master sessions, right? Where you give your own, are these all of them?
Yeah.
Oh, there's a lot of them.
These are all updated. Yeah, I gave it all I got.
Wow.
I mean, even though there's a lot of topic here, but again, like you said, I didn't try to overwhelm people with too many speakers and too many different information. I wanted to just take people through a roadmap where step by step, okay, these are the things you got to make sure you check the boxes one at a time to kind of build the foundation of your health. Because a lot of people jump around too much. So this is more designed as a roadmap, so you can just follow step by step and learn what are all the things you need to watch for.
Awesome. Yeah, and you got a taste today of Peter's expertise on the brain, and he's like that on so many topics. I got to get you on to talk about the brain more because I love it so much. I love Roger. I've just met him recently, but he's really a great guy, been in this space a long time. A lot of people know Todd Watts about parasites and his company Cellcore. This is me talking about mold, heavy metals and fulvic minerals. I like that one. This is my friend Evan talking about Candida. Christine, I also recommended to Peter. She's awesome. Wasn't she great, Peter?
She was a wealth of knowledge, yes.
Yeah. So lots of good folks, and you can kind of pick and choose what you want to tune into. If there's certain topics that appeal to you more, this is a good one too about the vagus nerve. So just come on and sign up. I have the link in the chat there, and just drop into whatever sessions you want to. Obviously, just get to know Peter better. He's just such a wealth of information. We've had a few questions come up about TBI and kids and trauma in the chat, and if we didn't quite get to your question fully, I'm sure there's going to be plenty more to tap into. Any particular conditions, Peter, that you want to highlight if people are dealing with or kids are dealing with? Oh, here's some right here, huh?
Yeah, and I can just speak on this for real quickly for a minute exactly. Start. Okay, so usually what I see is, people come, and this is the biggest thing. I'm trying to shape, or change the perception of functional medicine and how people look about healing themselves, because people are always chasing a diagnosis. Hey, doc, what do you think I have? That the diagnosis is less important. Or people will say, hey, doc, I have this diagnosis. What's the remedy for that? What do I take for it? I don't know what you take for it. It depends on what's causing that diagnosis, right? So the diagnosis matters less. It's more about understanding the physiology and what's the mechanism, what's happening on a cellular level that's actually creating that symptom, right? If you say ADHD, okay, so what's actually happening in the brain cells that's causing ADHD? If you don't have that understanding, then what are you really treating? And many people do the same thing with thyroid, do the same thing with GI problems or whatever problem. They don't understand how symptoms are produced, and they're just looking for a remedy. That's a quick fix. Nothing wrong with that. You want to feel better, I understand. But I'm going to propose that it's better to understand what's actually causing it. Elevate your knowledge to the level where, not self-diagnose, self-treat, not trying to be a doctor in 1 hour, but you should know something about it. And I think there's a lack of, people online who's giving out this information that's explaining the mechanism. A lot of people talk about just like, yeah, you have leaky gut, take L-glutamine. Okay, but why? What's really happening here? So I try to just give people more, and more in a good way, where it's understandable. I speak in English, not medical jargon, so people get it. I do this drawing. I draw a lot so that you can see how like things conceptually work. That's what's important, So when people have chronic condition, usually they suffer with brain symptoms, immune symptoms, and gut symptoms. Doesn't matter what you have. You have Hashimoto's, you have mold, you have candida, you have Lyme disease, you have, just name any chronic condition. Usually you have brain symptoms, you have immune symptoms, you have gut symptoms. That's what I see over and over again. Everybody coming with different diagnoses, what they think they have. Dr. Khan, I need help. And when I look at their symptom list, brain symptom, immune symptom, gut symptom. So it started to like, okay, what's the connection between why they all, this person has Lyme, this person has mold, this person has Hashimoto, they all have the same, almost the same, similar symptoms. So then it turns out that there's a brain immune gut connection, or I call it the big idea, the big connection between the brain and immune gut. And if we were to address that in a roadmap fashion, then things become simpler. You don't have to like take 50 supplements anymore. And you know where you stand with, okay, I'm at this step, so I'm not at that step yet. So I'm going to be patient until this step is done before I go to the next step. It helps so that people know what to expect, because people either have, just impatient. They're just like, hey, I'm not better in like 1 week already, or they're taking too many supplements. They don't even know why. They don't know what they're trying to fix. They don't understand what is. That's why I'm putting out this message.
That's great. Well, I'm so excited to be a part of it. I'm really honored, and I love the people you've got on there. I love your work. You recorded so many master classes. You're hilarious. You just have so much information to give. So that's awesome. So I hope people can attend. Right, Peter, thank you so much for coming on. Yeah, let's have you back and let's keep digging into this brain function. I think it's so fascinating. So just want to keep
so many different directions we can go with that. And I think, I think most people have, just don't really appreciate how important it is. And they also don't know what all can mess it up. And if you knew, then you start to look and you start to take different steps, so.
Yeah, let's come back. Let's have you come back and we'll dig into that more. But for now, just check out the events. Thank you again for coming on, and thanks for everyone who attended live. I really appreciate it. It's just so much more exciting for us to have your energy on here. So we appreciate that. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.